Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I don't think it comes as a shock to anybody that when you meet people for the first time, they tend to size you up. This is the Networking RX podcast. I am Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Again, it's probably no great surprise that when we meet somebody for the first time, they are sizing us up. Why? We're sizing them up. The question is, what are we sizing one another up for? That's the burning question. Before I get started, I just want to remind you that we're looking to add franchisees to AmSpirit Business Connections. This is a great opportunity for somebody to add on to what they're already doing. All our franchisees do something else for a few hours in the morning, a couple days a week. They're working the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise. The rest of the day, they are attorneys, accountants, financial advisors, realtors, coaches, consultants of various kinds. If you're interested, contact me through the show notes, or through the email in the show notes, or the one we provide at the end of the podcast. So again, back to this whole notion of sizing one another up. What are we sizing one another up for? That's an important question. I stumbled across, actually did some looking into this, and there were a couple sources on this. There was an article I found in the 2016, it was January 16th, 2016, Business Insider was an article, and it profiled Amy Cuddy, and that got me thinking because I had read her book. Her book is Presence, Bringing Your Boldest Self to Your Biggest Challenges. That's Amy Cuddy's book, and it was a very good book. It was on my shelf, and I'm going to touch on that as well. Again, I don't review books. I'll tell you it's a good book, but I won't go through the whole book. But this article kind of got me thinking about it a little more, and just, why are we sizing people up? And what they have found is that when you meet somebody within mere seconds, probably less than that, we are asking and they are asking, can I trust this person? Can I respect this person? Those are the two things. And the two things that we're looking for, and psychologists refer to these dimensions as warmth being the, can I trust this person? And then the competency part of it is, can I respect this person? And those are the two things that they're kind of sizing us up for. And so that's no great surprise. I mean, if we hearken back to the day when we were living in tribes, and when you live, back in the day, way back when, civilized but uncivilized, you lived in a tribe, and there wasn't a lot of interaction between tribes. People in the Miami, Florida tribe weren't flying up to meet the people in the Columbus, Ohio tribe. There just wasn't a lot of it. There was a vast space between tribes, and you might encounter somebody, and so you needed to know as quickly as possible. Your survival depended on knowing as quickly as possible whether you could trust somebody, whether they meant harm or they were, somebody that you could mutually benefit from. So that was kind of an important thing to look at right from the get-go. So it should come as no surprise that when I pose the question, what's more important, your competency or your warmth, which is more important, what's more important? Do I trust this person or do I respect this person? Which of those two are more important? And, trust. Trust is most important. There's a little excerpt in the article that I'll read it quickly. It says trust is most important. It makes sense when you consider that in the caveman days, it was more important to figure out if your fellow man was going to kill you and steal all your possessions than if he was competent enough to build a good fire. And so trust is more important than respect with respect to, what people are sizing up. This is what prompted me to break out Amy Cuddy's book. Again, it's Presence, Bringing Your Boldest Self to Your Biggest Challenges. She talks about this. She devotes a part of a chapter to this whole dilemma as to whether or not, respect or trust is most important. And I'll touch on a couple things with respect to that. But she makes the point that trust is most important. Respect or not, excuse me, trust or warmth is most important. And what she uses as an example, and there's both conjecture and empirical evidence for this, but she talks about people who learn about this the hard ways, MBA students going on their summer internships, and they go off to these summer internships, and they work it hard. They want to make an impression. These people are in MBA school. It's a 2-year program, so you really only have one summer. You go that first year, you get an internship. You get a great internship based on your first year studies. You get that great internship, and you do really well, and you get an offer, and you're set. And a lot of these MBA students, they go off to this internship, and they really kind of immerse themselves into the internship and feel that they're doing a great week on this, what really amounts to a 10-week job interview. And they're sat down at the end of the internship, and what they find is they don't get the job. And wait a minute, I did great work. And the managers, the hiring people, are like, yeah, you did do great work. You were awesome. You worked really hard, but nobody got the chance to get to know you. Is what they would find. And so it's it wasn't their competency, it wasn't their ability to build a fire or do a spreadsheet or make an analysis or whatever the internship might be. It was their inability to connect, inability to develop trust. And so while people can see, yeah, this person works hard, I don't know that I can trust this person. And when I talk to people from time to time about getting out there and getting themselves networked, certainly kids who are like college-age kids who come to me and will say, hey, can you give me some advice? And we talk about networking. I tell them, listen, everybody who applies for that job, certainly everybody who gives an interview, has the credentials. They all have the credentials. You're walking in there and you have the absolute credentials that they're looking for. Otherwise, they wouldn't waste time on you. It's all on your resume. It's all on LinkedIn. The differentiator is the ability to develop a relationship. Coming into that interview and be able to hit it out of the park with respect to talking, not talking about you, but just developing some rapport with the interviewing people. And we won't get into small talk. I've had other episodes on it. I'll do other episodes on it. But that's what's most important. So Cuddy talking about these MBA students is kind of her personal observation. It's nothing really empirical about it. But she then goes on in this particular chapter and talks about a couple different studies where they're actually looking at the numbers. And there was one study here. It was a study in 2013 of 51,836 leaders whose employees rated them. And rated them, and I'll get into what they call the golden quadrant in a minute. But what they found is that a lot of the reason why people fail is it's the warmth, the trustworthiness. It's not the competence. The world has plenty of competent people. What's driving success is not competence, it's our ability to develop this rapport. Competence is kind of that. Competence is not necessarily a soft skill. It can be certainly in some businesses, but in a lot of business, competence, and I keep thinking of finance people. They're working with finance, statistics, numbers, all very left brain type things. Same thing with marketing, looking into the research, understanding colors and all sorts of wording and verbiage and linguistics and how all that stuff plays in together. That's competence. It's the ability to be liked, be trusted, that's most important. So let's touch on what we'll call the golden quadrant. If you would stop and think for a minute, and I know this is hard because this is a podcast, but stop and think about a 2x2 matrix, 4 boxes. 2 boxes across, 2 boxes tall. There are 4 boxes. And on the vertical axis, the up and down axis, there are two options. One is trusted and the other is not trusted. And then across the horizontal axis are two boxes, respected and not respected, competent or not competent. And so you can be in one of those four boxes. Everybody can kind of be rated in each one of those four boxes. If you are somebody who is competent, respected, as well as warm and trustworthy, you're in that top box. That's called the golden quadrant, the golden box of the four. And that's really where you want to be. You want to be somebody who's competent. That's why going to school and studying and doing well is really important. But it's not everything. It's not everything. To really be in that quadrant, you've got to have this trustworthiness, this ability to establish rapport. Now, if you're the opposite of that, if you're the person who's really got no competence, no respect, and there's no trustworthiness, there's no warmth, you're kind of in that bottom right quadrant. You're an abrasive. Well, they're not listening anyways. You're an abrasive loser. They're not listening anyway, so I'm not going to be too worried about offending anybody. But there are the other two quadrants, and we're all, hopefully none of us are in that bottom quadrant. None of us listening are in the bottom right quadrant. But there are some of us out there that, we're kind of lacking in competence, and we're lacking in competence, but we're trusted. We're warm. There's warmth there. People like us. That quadrant has some staying power. I'll speak from my own experience, my own perspective, my own opinion on it. But when I come across people, certainly within the realm of AmSpirit Business Connections, when I come across people who might lack some competence with respect to what they do, they're new to their profession, but there's a level of likability to them, there's a level of trustworthiness to them, I'm willing to invest time in that, because competence can be picked up. We can learn things. The soft skills are the soft skills are really the hard things, and they're hard to teach. And so if somebody's got those, teaching them the nuts and bolts can be a whole lot easier. It can be a whole lot easier. You stop and think about somebody who's like an accountant, right? A great person, lovable person. It's like they just don't really understand the numbers, or they struggle with that. That stuff can be taught. It can be kind of nurtured along. The likability, the trustworthy part of it is the part that's the part that can't be. The flip side of that, or the lower left quadrant, the person who is competent but not really trusted, not really liked. Those people, it's problematic. Those people tend to get hired. They tend to get engagements. Things tend to work well in the short run, but over time the relationship just kind of wears down. And I don't know that I have a ton of tolerance for that type of person. The smart person who's they're a smart jerk is really what it boils down to. I don't know. I have a tolerance to that. Somehow or another they've gotten away with it, and it's their ability has allowed them to carry on. And we see this in pro sports. You see people who just are tremendous talents, but they're just not good teammates. And I think in time, their talent carries them, but the second their talent starts to wane, it's time to cut and run. Where you might have some athletes who, they're just good people. They're good people to have in the locker room, good to keep around. Their talents start to wane, but you're going to keep them around because you need that influence. You need those types of people on your team, whether it's a pro sports team or it's an insurance team or whatever it might be. So just a quick little discussion on how we size people up. And know that when you size people up, when you come up across somebody that's going through your mind quickly, it's in nanoseconds, it's happening. Do I trust this person? Can I respect this person? And they're thinking the same thing. And the key is relationship, developing the relationship. You can build the confidence in time. You can build that up. That can build in time. But when you have the relationship with the warmth and the trust, then you get that time to kind of build the confidence. If you're kind of a jerk from the get-go, you're not going to have the time to establish your competence. So, something to think about.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.